Alright, so today I want to introduce you to the triple recessive ball python. A ball python that contains 3 recessive genes in a single snake. And let me tell you, if you're thinking about going down this rabbit hole, it can take an incredibly long time to make your first triple recessive. Essentially what you need is you need to make a ball python with 6 genes, 2 copies of each recessive gene. And most people that I've heard of shooting for the triple recessive, most people say to make the very first one, it took them 10 or more years to make the very first triple recessive, which is kind of crazy. I actually went over to morphmarket.com and I was looking through thousands and thousands of ball pythons. I think I looked through about 10,000 snakes until my eyes were just glazing over looking for a triple recessive visual. And out of all those snakes, I only found 3 examples of a triple visual recessive, which is kind of crazy. So today I want to jump over the internet and I want to show you how to make a triple recessive and some of the complications and challenges around the triple recessive ball python. Alright, so I'm going to jump over here on morphmarket.com and I want to start with the 3 triple recessives that I found over here on Morph Market. It's pretty amazing the combinations that people are working with. And take a look at this one. This one's pretty amazing. This is the combination of the Ultramel, the Ghost, and the Pied. So essentially what it is the Pied brings in the big splotches of white, and then the Ghost, a lot of times the Ghost will actually give it more of a creamy color, and sometimes the Ghost can be kind of orange. There's some orange versions of the Ghost, and there's actually an orange Ghost, which is kind of separate from the Ghost. But as far as I know, the Ghost and the orange Ghost are pretty much compatible. I'd say pretty much the same gene, just 2 different lines of the same gene. And then you have the Ultramel, which is, I'd say, the Ultramel gives it more of a yellow, almost like, I'd say it's kind of like a type of albino. The Ultramel is really close to, I'd say probably the closest thing to the Ultramel is the Monarch, which is pretty amazing. And this combination to actually get all 3 in one snake, that is definitely an accomplishment. If you actually look at the genes over here, 3 recessives with no other genes in the mix, it's pretty amazing. And this one actually sold in 2019 for $7,500. That is pretty crazy. And if you actually look at the description down here, it says it took them close to 10 years to make this ball python, which is pretty amazing. I actually pulled up a couple more examples of a triple recessive. And take a look at this. This is pretty interesting. This is the combination of, well, it's actually listed as a VPI Snow, which is the VPI Axanthic plus the albino to give you this completely white snake with the red eyes. And then it also has Clown in the mix. So kind of the tricky thing about this is you pretty much have to know the breeding to determine if you have Clown in the mix, because I'd say it's probably really difficult to actually figure out if it's in there. So the only way you'd really know for sure if it was in there is, for example, if you actually started with 2 visual clowns that were het for Axanthic and het for albino, you could do that and you'd get all visual clowns. Or I've actually seen a lot of times with some of these white snakes, you can actually take a UV light of the right wavelength and shine it on your white snake, and sometimes with the proper UV light you can actually see some of the pattern underneath coming through. I'd say probably if you actually shine a UV light on this, you can almost see a little bit of pattern coming through from the clouds. As a matter of fact, you might not, you need a UV light, you can almost see it kind of breaking through. But that is a pretty amazing combination. And take a look at the price on this one. This one actually sold in 2019 for $9,000, and some of these it takes a really long time to actually make them. I pulled up one more over here. Take a look at this. This is an interesting combination. This is a hypo, which is the Ghost, and the genetic stripe and the VPI Axanthic. And this one's kind of interesting because it's 66% het for another recessive. They almost hit the quad recessive with 4 recessives. That is pretty amazing. And this one actually sold, and this one's actually on hold in December 2020 for $6,500. This is pretty amazing. And these are the only ones that I can find over here on Morph Market. And I'm actually working on a triple recessive project myself. And I kind of wanted to show you what I was working on here in my collection. I actually have this snake right here. This is an albino. albino pied, which is a double recessive gene. So the pied brings in the white, and then the albino brings in the yellow color and gives it the bright red eyes. So this is two recessives. And actually, as a matter of fact, I didn't start with an albino and a pied and breed them together. I actually bought this thing. I kind of skipped ahead a little bit, because if you bought the individual genes, let me tell you, it would definitely take a lot longer than 10 years to do that. So I actually bought an albino pied, and I bred it to my female clown, which looks similar to this, just a single gene clown and the two genes with the albino pied. And when I bred those together, actually, I can show you what I made. I made a few of them over here. I sold a couple of them over here on Morph Market, and this is what you get. You get a normal looking snake that is triple het for albino, het for pied, and het for clown. And they, you know, technically they are normal looking snakes that just look like the normal wild type ball python, but it seems like these are a lot brighter than a normal, and it seems like the pattern's a little bit more jumbled up than a normal, although they do look really close to just a regular normal ball python. So kind of the tricky thing is what I'm going to do is I'm going to raise these up and I'm going to breed them together. So it gets a little bit complicated. So if I buy the albino pied and then the clown, essentially what I have to do is I have to wait for my clown female to get up to size in order to breed, and that usually takes 2 or 3 years in order just to breed it, you know, to breed my albino pied to my clown. And as a matter of fact, it'll probably take me longer than 10 years for this project. So then when I got these hatchlings, I actually produced these hatchlings last year, so they're just about a year old, coming up on, I'd say maybe 800 grams, maybe close to 900. I haven't actually weighed them lately, but they've been off food for a little bit. I think they're coming up to the 1,000-gram wall. And then what I have to do is I have to take my hatchlings, I have to raise them up until they're mature, which is another 3 years. So we're already looking at like 5 years for these females just to breed my triple hets together, which is kind of crazy. And I actually brought this over to the genetic wizard over here. It's a genetic calculator for ball pythons over here on the World of Ball Pythons. And I plugged in my triple hets. So I actually plugged in het albino, het clown, het pied for both the male and the female. I hit calculate and take a look at all the stuff that I can get from that pairing. And essentially what I can get, you know, I can actually get some normals, and then I'll get some hets, het pied, het clown, and then I'll get some visuals. I'll get some pieds, some clowns, and some albinos. And then I'll get the double hets, and then I'll get the double visuals with the possible hets. There's a whole bunch of stuff I can get. And then if you look all the way down here on the bottom, 1 in 64 odds that I'll actually hit the albino clown pied visual with all 6 genes, the 3 recessive genes all in one snake. And if you actually kind of wrap your hand around the statistics on this, so it's 1 in 64 chance that I'll produce the thing that I'm shooting for, the triple visual. So if you actually figure a ball python female lay about 6 eggs per year, it'll take me about 10 years to produce this snake right here. But I kind of cheated. I actually have 2 females. So with 2 females, hopefully I'll be able to cut that time in half, and I'll cut it down to probably about 5 years instead of 10 years, which is kind of crazy. So that's 5 years plus another 5 years if you actually take into consideration I'm actually raising up my female clown and then breeding them together and then raising up my hatchlings in order just to even start this triple head pairing, which is kind of crazy. And if I actually did hit this, so for example, take a look at this. If I hit the albino clown pied, I could definitely speed things up in the future, especially if it was a male. So take a look at this. You can actually come back to the genetic wizard, plug in my female triple hets, and breed it back to a male triple visual. And if you actually hit calculate and look at the results here, take a look at this. It actually reduces my odds from 1 in 64 down to 1 in 8 odds. So I could definitely speed up once I produce my very first triple visual, assuming it was a male. If it was a female, I'd have to wait until I produced another one, or you'd have to figure out, I'd have to wait until that female was ready, which would be another 3 years. And then of course, if you actually had the triple visual and you bred it with another triple visual, you could produce a whole clutch of all triple visual ball pythons, which is pretty awesome. So take a look at this. This is kind of what I'm shooting for. This is a clown pied. As a matter of fact, I actually came over here at Morph Market and they didn't have an albino pied clown visual. I don't think anyone has ever made one before. So I may be the world's first if I can get there within the next 5 years to produce my very first visual albino pied clown. I don't know, it may take me a lot longer. And the other thing about statistics is sometimes it can really trick you. You know, sometimes you can look at the 1 in 64 odds, and sometimes you can make one earlier and sometimes you can make one later. I've actually bred a bamboo to a normal, and technically you should get 50% bamboos. And I've actually seen some people where they'll take a bamboo, breed it to a normal, and they'll get a whole clutch of bamboos on the first shot. And I actually did the same thing last year. I think I bred a bamboo to something else. I think it was like a pinstripe or something like that. And half of them should have been bamboos, and out of 10 eggs, I only got 1 bamboo. So sometimes the odds can work for you, and sometimes it can work against you. And sometimes it'll take, you know, decades to actually hit the odds on some of these projects. So if you actually take a look at this one, this is probably the closest that I can see as far as what I'm shooting for the triple visual. So the clown pied looks pretty much like a pied ball python, and then it has kind of this crazy looking head that you'd see on a clown. And then keep in mind, this would be actually, if you take a look at this one, so this is the albino pied. So essentially what I'm actually shooting for would look almost exactly like this, except the head of the snake would have a clown pattern to it when I finally hit my triple visual recessive, which is kind of crazy. And the other thing I could actually do is once I hit it, I could take this snake and breed it to another recessive going further down the rabbit hole. And one of the things that I've considered, take a look at this, I can actually take it and breed it to a puzzle. So if I was actually looking ahead, what I can actually do is I could buy a female puzzle now and breed that, you know, kind of grow up the puzzle and get it to breeding size before I hit that triple visual recessive. And then once I hit the triple visual recessive, I'd have the puzzle female ready to go. But the problem is now, if I actually took a triple visual recessive and I bred it to another recessive, I'd get the quad recessives. And take a look at this. If you plug that into the genetic wizard, it goes really far down the rabbit hole. Head albino, head clown, head pied, and head puzzle. I don't know anyone that's ever produced a quad visual recessive. And if you actually look at all the different combinations that you can get from all those, it's mind-boggling how many different combinations. If you look all the way down at the bottom, 1 in 256 odds that you would hit the quadruple visual recessive, which is kind of crazy. I actually figured that out on an average of 6 eggs per clutch. That would take me over 40 years to hit this. And the other way I could actually speed up is if I had, for example, I could actually make 40 females and I could hit it in 1 year, but let me tell you, that would probably be a waste of resources trying to go after this crazy thing. And the other thing you have to keep in mind too is you have to look at genes. If you're wanting to go down either the triple or the quadruple recessives, you want to really be careful as far as which genes you're shooting for. So if you actually make the snows, it can be even more challenging, because if you actually make the all white snake with the VPI axanthic or any version of axanthic and the albino, it'll completely mask all the other genes. So you can produce a whole bunch of snows, and you may not know if you actually have the clown and the puzzle in that combination until you raised up all those white snakes and bred them to something else to prove them out. I'd probably avoid genes like that kind of mask your results as far as going down this crazy rabbit hole. All right, so what is time for the question of the day? And Keno Smith asks, is it okay to breed a male ball python when it's 1 year old? I have some male ball pythons from 2020 and I'm thinking about breeding them in 2021. And that is a very good question. As a matter of fact, I'd probably advise against breeding a 1 year old male ball python. And pretty much across the board, I'd say most people say that you actually can breed a 1 year old male ball python. That's pretty much the minimum age. And when I first started in ball pythons, one of the first snakes that I bought was a scaleless head male. And believe it or not, I bred it when it was 1 year old. As a matter of fact, I actually took that really small 1-year-old ball python. I don't even think it was like 500 grams yet, just a little hatchling, just a little bit bigger than, you know, kind of a juvenile. And I actually put it with my 5,000 gram female, which was kind of wild. I actually took this little worm of a snake and I put it on top of this really huge female. And believe it or not, they actually bred. And I got a whole bunch of scaleless heads from that one. But kind of the interesting thing is I tried this again last year. I had 3 males that were 1 year old and I tried to breed them through my collection. I think I had bred them to like 6 or 7 females. And the problem is none of those females went. I think all those males were just too young and it pretty much trashed my entire ball python season. I usually have about 100 plus hatchlings and I think last year I only had like 50 hatchlings or something like that. So you probably can do it, I'd say. In some cases, if you have a project that's really time sensitive, say for example, if you actually had the scaleless head and you were aware of the scaleless head project really dropping in value really super quick and you wanted to produce some before the value really bottomed out, I'd say it's pretty much bottomed out right now as far as the scaleless head project, so it doesn't really matter. But if you actually have a project that's really depreciating really fast, I've actually seen some people kind of rush it and try to produce some snakes with that gene in it before the market kind of crashes on that project. But other than that, I would probably wait for the second year for my males to be at least 2 years old. So that is pretty much it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.